coming. How's everybody doing? Good? Good. Good to see you guys. Hello, coming in. So I got you here up in the screen. I'll just introduce myself for those who are new. My name is Asalia. I am the program manager for Texas Immersive and leading on the BuildFest event, which is why you're here. We have amazing guests today that are going to teach us some of the haptics equipment, how to incorporate it into composition, music, sound, all the fun stuff that I get excited because my background is in music. So I'm excited for this for today. And we also have some people from, ooh.
I was getting excited for music too, so thank you.
We also have students from the Bateman team that will happy to introduce themselves. We're waiting on one more person.
She's coming in, wasn't just me.
Awesome. So we'll give a little bit of the social impact ideas. So yeah. Would you start by introducing yourselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll do that. I'm a familiar face for most of you, so I'll be quick. But I'm Lee Sembluk. I'm one of the co-founders and CTO of DataFeel. And then I'll kind of let you guys introduce yourselves, with the exception of I'll have Clark introduce Maddie and Maddie introduce Clark, because they always do a better job of introducing one another. When they introduce themselves, it tends to be boring because they're humble. So I'll have them pump up one another. But they've been friends for I don't even know how long. But maybe we'll start. Clark, you start with Maddie, and then we'll just kind of go from there.
Well, on this version of Hollywood Squares, in your lower center box, on my screen anyway, is Maddie Kaczynski, my friend, partner in our music company, Emmy-winning composer, all-around great guy and phenomenal arranger. Started playing violin when he was 6.
3.
Maybe I got that 3. Sorry, I misjudged. And has played with many orchestras and a phenomenal musician and all-around great guy.
Well, thank you, Clark. Yeah, Clark's my other half with music, and he's a Grammy, Emmy winning engineer and mixer, and works on my film and TV work, and amazing guy and very helpful and great collaborator, and full of stories and knowledge.
And then maybe we'll go with Brandon to round out the LA crew, which Maddie and Clark are based out of, but Brandon as well. Go ahead, and then we'll finish with Daniel.
Sure. Hey, everybody. My name is Brandon Howard. I am out here in the part of the LA team with DataFeel. My background is less musical, but more in the health and wellness side of sound and vibration and how we can use it for healing. And I'm probably going to dig a bit more into that, but having a great time with DataFeel, working with Maddie and Clark. We're collectively working on the content side of things, and excited to share what we're doing and seeing how that inspires the team at UT.
And yeah, I'm Daniel Lindenberger. I'm coming in from Vancouver, Canada, or close to Langley. And I've been doing the prototyping and programming kind of along the road from the beginning for the DataFeel team. So I'll show you a little bit about how some of the pieces kind of work. And then when I'm there with you all, we'll do a whole lot of prototyping and experimenting and brainstorming together, I'm guessing. So I'm coming with a background both from a little bit on the positive impact space and also working at UBC with students who are prototyping with immersive media. So Azalea, at some point, we'll have to talk more about that. But yeah, so really looking forward to seeing what projects y'all come up with.
Daniel's the brains of the team.
I love it. It's very nice to meet you all. And we also have some people here in person that would like to introduce themselves. Would you like to come up? Yay. And I'm just gonna bring you up here to the screen so you can show.
Hello, everyone. My name is Samia Tasneem. I'm a public relations senior I'm on the Bateman team, and if you don't know what that is, I'll let you know. So there is a national organization called the Public Relations Society of America. So it's just it's a professional organization for public relations professionals. And every year they have a competition for undergraduate students called the Bateman competition. And every year there's a different client. This year's client is every library. They're a nonprofit and political action committee that's dedicated to policy advocacy for libraries and doing a lot of activism about book bans. So yeah, they're our client this year, and we're really excited to work with y'all to help generate support for every library and inform people on different library policies. Libraries are really, really important spaces, and they're very underrated, and people aren't thankful enough for them. They provide third spaces for communities outside of the home and workplaces. They offer so many resources. Like, lots of people in this country still don't have computers, and so they go to the library, or don't have books, so they go to the library. What else do I have for y'all? Yeah, and so one of our main angles that we're taking on this campaign is focused, when it comes to banned books, is focusing on children's books. We aren't trying to think more about banned books that have been more controversial, like The Hunger Games or books about DE&I. As much as we would love to advocate for those books, for the purposes of our campaign, we really want to hit on nostalgia, especially since we're talking to college students and millennials and Gen Z. We really think people care. But it sucks to say that people aren't as excited about Hunger Games being banned, but when you talk about Captain Underpants and Junie B. Jones, why are these books getting banned? People really want to know why, and so that's where our campaign is going to be. Thank you.
That's awesome.
Interesting.
I like that.
Yeah, fantastic.
No, awesome. And we also have a TXI team here. I will try to aim it to people. If you guys want to say hi, you know Sophia, right there in the center.
Hello, nice to meet you. I'm a tech associate for TXI. I'm going to be helping with these workshops and also during the actual BuildFest itself. I'll be general tech support. My background's in computer animation, film, and game design. So working largely with game engines. So excited to see what we're building with Unity.
I was gonna say on that as well, Sophia. I think we, if you know Godot as well, I think we'll have an integration on Godot as well that seems to work quite well. So we may have another one if you're familiar with Godot.
I have like worked with it, but not the same capacity. But we will.
Okay, cool. So just like we'll have a couple different options and various things too. So just thought I'd point that out because that was a newish development. We're always trying to squeeze some things in last minute for you, but that'll be good. Okay.
Awesome. And we also have two interns right here, you may know.
Hi, I'm Morgan. I'm a senior advertising major, and I'm also the lead digital marketing intern for the Social Impact BuildFest at Texas Immersive. Hello, my name is Maris. I am also a senior in the TXI program, and this semester I'm also an intern for TXI, and I'm leading their awareness campaign.
And if you're an explorer with TXI, raise your hand. Woo! We have one over there in the corner. Yay! Awesome, awesome. So a lot of new faces that I don't know. Do you guys want to know anything about the crowd today joining us, or want to get started and get them into some cool?
I think we'll probably get started soon, but just before that, how many of you are familiar with like digital audio workstations, have music backgrounds, that type of thing? Just put your hand up nice and high. Okay, cool. So we've got a few there. You'll probably really like this. Anyone that's kind of in the music space. We are going to make it as easy as possible for others to also do creation with haptic tracks, even if it's straight from data or other things too. But we'll go a little bit into today's more focused on the actual like composition, the outputs tying in with sound, music, some other parts there as well. So but before I pass it over to Brandon to start, like the one thing for us was we really were focused not only on just how can we make something feel cool. We wanted to make sure that everything we do actually benefits humans as opposed to just being I don't want to pick on cell phones too much or various other things, but it's almost like demands for attention how haptics are usually used of like your phone's vibrating, stop what you're doing, look at a screen kind of thing. We wanted to make sure that we use multi-energy haptics tied with things to actually have positive impacts on people, on connection, on communication, on information, that type of stuff. So without further ado, I'll be passing it over to Brandon, who I think is going to be doing. Do you want me to do the video, correct, Brandon?
Yes, please, if you can, Lee.
Okay.
Let me
So-
know if I can tee it up a little bit.
Yeah, I'll be pulling that up right away. I need to reopen it, but I'll have that. But yeah, just do a little bit of an intro and then I'll start my screen share shortly.
Perfect. Well, hello again, everyone. Again, the reason that I am here today and on the DataFeel team is I started to work on how to use like sound and vibration to heal myself, and then I started using it to help others heal.
With this event is for you to optimize the.
All right.
Yeah, my voice again.
It kept auto playing for
We
me.
can hear two of you.
Yeah, no, the more the merrier. I love it. So just a quick tee up is that I met Lee because I was working on an app called Euphoria. It uses binaural beats. I met Daniel at the same time I met Lee, so we go back a few years. And I was using binaural beats and solfeggio tones and Schumann frequencies to help people shift their state of consciousness to impact their stress levels. And so by reducing their stress levels and being able to use sound and color in order to help people get there, we found a way to, make reducing your stress easier. And by reducing your stress, you improve your performance, your cognition, and you save yourself some trips to the doctor. So without further ado, Lee is going to start this video that kind of introduces who I am, what I looked into, binaural beats, how to use them, and then, also some tools that you can use with your projects coming up. So why don't you go ahead and hit play, Lee, and then I can take some questions after that.
Okay. I'm gonna try and optimize for video sharing and see if this works out well. And
one opportunity with this
hold
event
on.
is for you to
Full screen. Perfect. Does this look good for everybody there?
our body has its own.
I gotta go back.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brandon Howard, and I design wellness technology. I launched an app on iOS called Euphoria. It uses specifically tuned frequencies to help people reduce stress and chronic pain. It's led to the work I'm doing now with Sony, UCLA, DataFeel, and others. And over the next few months, we plan on launching Euphoria 2.0 and hope to make digital sound healing accessible for everyone. I'm excited to see what all of you create for UT's Social Impact BuildFest. I've had a lot of fun working on social impact hackathons. I participated in UCLA's opioid epidemic hackathon, Children's Hospital of LA's gamifying health hackathon, and another one addressing health gaps in underserved communities. This initiative for library advocacy and freedom of information sounds exciting and comes at a really crucial time. Education and information are both facing increasing amounts of disruption, and we're all coming together to see how we can help. As a software and platform designer focused on wellness, I do my best to take into account every aspect a person might be experiencing in any given moment. What people see, taste, touch, smell, feel, sense, it augments their experience and their ability to retain information. Color therapy, color psychology, aromatherapy, ergonomics, food as medicine. These are all branches of research showing evidence that taking these factors into consideration impacts outcomes. There's also how we learn. Much of our education system is designed for one of 7 different learning types. This can make the classroom a stressful place for some. Learning can be even more challenging in places where getting to the school or the library is stressful. Reducing stress and chronic pain is important to me and many innovators because these issues lead to 90% of America's $4.5 trillion healthcare expense, and that's #1 in the world. My area of expertise is around how we can improve our experience, our cognition, and even our health using sound and vibration. I play in a world of mathematically derived frequencies, combining sound waves in ways that shift our mood, energy, and our state of mind. To date, Euphoria has helped nearly 40,000 people around the globe with anxiety, depression, brain fog, insomnia, creative blocks, mood swings, motivation, meditation, learning, chronic pain, sports recovery, and there's a lot more. We do this with a technology known as binaural audio. It's also known as hemispheric audio, or as I like to call it, binaural beats. Binaural beats are a naturally occurring and easily replicated phenomena that happens when 2 sound waves of 2 different sizes collide. The difference between the 2 waves creates a perceptible and measurable 3rd wave that we call the binaural beat. Adjusting these waves to specific frequencies allows us to tap into our body's sympathetic nature. By sympathetic, I mean that our biology reacts to vibrations. Each bone and organ we have in our body has its own natural resonance. That means the one frequency where we can make it vibrate, while the brain has many responses to many frequencies. When something is vibrating at, say, 30 hertz, it can make our brain vibrate at 30 hertz. It's like a tuning fork. Frequencies are constantly entraining our brains to vibrate into alignment. One opportunity with this event is for you to optimize the learning experience in a library setting. Maybe you're thinking VR headsets and beanbags, tablets and headphones, smart libraries, or even remote libraries. The technology we're sharing with you allows you to customize that experience to help visitors learn, express themselves, tap into their creativity, relax, focus, through the personal experience of sound and vibration. When we sleep, our brains resonate between 0 and 3 hertz. This is called delta state. When we meditate, our brains vibrate between 5 and 8 hertz. That's called theta state. Tones in the gamma range between 30 and 60 hertz are said to improve cognition and memory. These frequencies are experienced more readily in bass-heavy music. For example, here's a binaural beat of 7.83 hertz. This frequency was calculated by physicist Winifred Otto Schumann, based on his calculations of the electromagnetic friction between the Earth and the ionosphere. It's also said to be a frequency at which DNA self-replicates. There are 3 parts to what you're listening to. First is the carrier tone, which plays in one ear, which all the other calculations are based off of. In this case, we're listening to 33 hertz, an octave of the 528 hertz solfeggio tone. The second thing you're listening to is the targeted binaural frequency of 7.83 hertz. The third thing you're listening to is the sum or the difference of the first 2 frequency and is played in the other ear. So in our left channel, we start with our carrier tone of 33 hertz. We add 7.83 to that to get our right channel, and that's 40.83 hertz. So put that in your right channel, and when the 2 waves combine, the difference is at 7.83 hertz. Euphoria's first approach worked best for headphones, and now with DataFeel, we're expanding into haptics. The same math applies. One frequency in channel A, then a slightly different frequency in channel B. You can place their dots where you like, or even where you feel discomfort or pain, and press play. If all this math sounds complicated, you can always use the Euphoria app. Create a combination of tones using the prompts on the home screen and press play. Once your binaural beat begins, scroll down and view the frequencies listed to determine your left and your right channels. One last little footnote. I was personally motivated to make Euphoria as healthy and as positive an experience as possible, so I looked into healthy carrier tones. On Euphoria, we use a combination of solfeggio tones and Schumann resonance frequencies to help listeners curate how they want to feel. By reducing their stress levels, they optimize their performance, reduce strain on the body. This hackathon is an opportunity for you to take our innovations in your own directions. Create something fun, create something helpful, something healthy, something surprising. When it comes to our collective social experience, we need more win-win scenarios, and solutions that help people help themselves and each other is where our innovations are most needed. I will be available along with Maddie and Clark, who are going to show you how to really dig into creating with frequencies. If you have any questions, I will be available remotely. Hopefully this video expands your opportunities and helps you execute on your visions. I'm excited to see what you create. All right. So that video did not play the way I wanted it to. But thank you all for your time and for paying attention. I will probably put a better version of that on YouTube, so that way people have a link that runs a little bit more seamlessly. There was a lot of infographics and details that didn't really show up for everybody. Um, However, the other thing that I wanted to mention is that, like, if you did see the infographic, we call it the Da Vinci model. And it's like, the human figure, and it's got all the different colors on it. That's essentially the work and the research that I've been looking into, is looking into these sort of parallels in color psychology and Ayurvedic medicine, and trying to bring, those theories into sort of the vibrational realm of the electromagnetic spectrum. We did that with the app launch. We're at like 80% positive, results in terms of the 400,000 use cases that we have on the platform, and we want to expand that. I'm working with DataFeel now because they see the potential of bringing these vibrations into different types of technology. Like headphones are one place, and we're doing that with music with Maddie and Clark, and then with Daniel, we're adding those same vibrations into haptics and creating experiences that way. And so that's where our ideas kind of are right now. And super curious to see what kind of thoughts and ideas you all might have. And when it comes to binaural beats and knowing what frequencies to play and where to put them, I will share the infographics so you have that. But I also am making myself available to, give tutorials, answer questions, like hold hands. It might take a bit of time for people to like wrap their heads around how you can use these frequencies to create extra effects. But I'm always happy to answer questions and really delve deeper for anybody who wants to like understand it all. So I can stop there, or I can answer questions now, or I can answer questions laterly.
I think we'll maybe just pause on that, because we'll also tie into a little bit of what Maddie and Clark have been doing to go from there, and then we'll come back to questions for both of you before we get into Daniel. But the one thing that I do want to say, and Brandon touched on it throughout the weekend, he will be a resource, as will Maddie and Clark on the composition side for anyone that is doing the competition. Daniel will be there in person, as will myself. So everyone here, you will, we want to be able to help you create things for certain purposes. So what we were wanting to make sure Brandon got across is different frequencies, whether they're through audio, whether they're through haptics in the actual hardware that you'll be working with, they do have different responses on the body. There's lots of different research out there on different things, but in short, the frequencies on their own are important. So not all frequencies are created the same. Like for example, there's certain ones that if you put on your head, your vision starts going blurry. Like that's not something we want, but it's a way of showing that like they do have impacts in the body on negative ways, but also positive, such as calming the vagus nerve, which allows our whole bodies just to calm down, right? So there's different ways of doing this. We can either help point you in the right direction, so that it's not just a vibration isn't just a vibration. We actually want purposes for the stuff you do, which can stimulate connection, it can stimulate calm, it can actually, for people in freeze states, it can get you to be mobile and productive, right? Like so we just want to let you know that there are some of these resources that might be tying into the stuff you do versus storytelling, so that you can resonate a little bit better with the characters and the stories. Like there's all different really cool ways of doing it. So we just wanted to tee that up. I will say there's lots of other cool stuff that Brandon and Maddie and Clark and Daniel are working on with us, where that takes it multiple steps forward. We're not really able to discuss those too much right now, but you know, we're happy to help with any of the ideas that you have over the next little bit. Is there any question like that you feel needs like is good for Brandon right now before handing it over? I'll just give a second if there's anything. No. Okay, cool. Then I'll pass it on to our resident music experts, one of which I think is he might be off screen.
Maddie, I know he was oh, there he is.
Yeah. Okay.
He's
So
he's the smart one. I'm
Yeah.
just, you know,
that.
I'm just here for looks. I mean, I'll just give an overview before Maddie gets into the nuts and bolts of it. I noticed there were only a few of you that raised your hands that you're musically inclined or know about DAWs or workstations. In Maddie and I's experience in our experimentation in writing for the dots, we've come up with some parameters that work well, but we kind of want you to break them and come up with your own scenarios. But we've found that the thermals tend to be slower in ramp, so we use those for longer musical transitions and to build suspense and using cold and hot. Then the vibration is a very articulate. You can follow melodic content and stuff that way. And then the lights are very quick, and we have a range of different colors of light. So those can be really articulate, even more so than. So that's just an overall some of the parameters that we've came up with that work best for musical compositions and as they relate to haptics. And then I'll let Maddie explain the nuts and bolts of basically what he came up with in how to do this.
And in the meantime, I'll also add with the vibration elements, we do have both intensity that you really feel, but then also the frequency, which is a little bit, it's not as easy to feel, but that feel the differences. You can a little bit, but it's sort of the two dials that you get to use when it comes to frequency is one is intensity and the other is the actual spectrum. And so to put things maybe a little bit simpler, like Maddie and Clark have a lot to do with the feeling. Brandon and the frequency side of it has more to do with the impact that your body might receive as opposed to your skin might feel. So it's kind of I'll say like a marriage between those two things.
And I think when they get the dev kits, they can go through that test program and really get a good feel for that.
Exactly. All right, we can see your screen, Maddie.
Excellent. So these dots fascinated me. So my background is writing for large scale orchestra, all the way down to chamber groups and then television and film. And so I approach the dots from a very musical way, almost thinking of the dots as its own set of instruments and its own orchestra. Just as you would have a guitar, a different timbre and color and way of playing from a violin, let's say, like hot and cold and vibration, they're two different instruments and two different approaches. So that really fascinated me in this idea of treating it like you're learning an instrument. I mean, the dots are its own instrument, and you're learning, and it's really fascinating. So just a quick overview on the more technical side. Those who will be using a DAW hooked to a keyboard, I find it's just a very, very easy way. There's the keyboard, using 4 notes on the keyboard, just basically pressing buttons, but it's in a nice visual way. And it makes it fairly easy to write for. So basically what I end up doing, if you incorporate music into what you're doing, is I drag an audio file into the DAW. Can you guys hear this?
No.
No. Well, that's not going to help them.
So Maddie, if you go back out of the screen share and when you click share, there should be an option to share the
Audio
sound of your
as well.
system. Yeah.
Okay.
So you might just have to go back out and then come back in. It might be an option from the actual Zoom top, but I think it's easier just to restart it. It'll be a checkbox on the right when you go back in and do the screen share.
Okay.
But notice the compositional trick that Matt is doing of building anticipation, which is excellent.
Yes, with silence.
Exactly. This is all on purpose.
All right, try again, and if it doesn't work, then one of
I'll
you
just talk.
have to sing along.
All right. I assume it doesn't work.
No.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll do it visually then. So yeah, so I bring in an audio file, and then I basically I'm gonna call it like dots, and you guys have 4 dots. And by the way, you can place the dots anywhere. We had experimented with just like 4 on the arm. And you can imagine that's kind of cool, because if you are thinking melodically, you can have it go up and down the arm like a real instrument. One of the more interesting things we did was place a dot on the top and bottom of the forearm on each side. But that's something to think about, is how you want to place the dots. And Brandon can kind of speak more to this, but certain parts of your body are more receptive to certain frequency. So these are all things to think about and experiment with, and I'm really curious what you guys do. So in the DAW, so we can label this like dots, and then we would create another one we call thermals, and then another one called lights. So each one of these tracks will control the various haptics on the dot. It's a shame that I can't share that. All right, I'm going to switch over to this. So if you could hear this, this is how, when it's composed, you might you'll visually see it put in. And I'll do a video of this so you guys have more step-by-step, but for right now it's basically just an overview. So each one of these lines here controls on off for vibration, and all we're using are C, D, E, and F as the way to control each dot. So for thermal, I don't know if you can see this on screen, but see all these little lines, there's like a bunch of little lines going down and up. And what that is we use the pitch bend function of your keyboard to create the cold and the heat. And as Clark had mentioned, you have to play around with it. It's something that you can't go super cold and super hot. It takes a little bit of finesse, but that track is using the pitch bend. And if you if you're familiar, the pitch bend is automatically at 0, and you push the wheel up and then it resets to 0, push it down, resets to 0. So you always reset to 0 so you don't stay on hot or cold. And then the third track are lights. They're doing lights, right, Lee?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, great. So, and this is something that I just happened to tell Daniel when he put this when we transferred it to the dots. I think we just picked a color for each note, but you can do it any way you want. So there's lots of flexibility, and it's pretty exciting with what you can do and how it feels. So that's a basic overview on how I go in and to the music and to the notes, create melody. If it's something rambunctious, you can use the dots to create texture. Yeah, and it's like a whole set of instruments, and you find your own way to use them and to experiment with them, and what works best for you. So that's the overview. And again, I'll put this into a video for you guys, and I'm sure that'll help a bit.
And I'll also add that they will likely have a template as well for anyone that can be used. This one is in Logic Pro, but we're looking at doing it for other ones as well. And you can see there is a track for binaurals as well, if that's something that wants to be tied on or tied in, that can come from Brandon and various other pieces too. So and then the other thing I'll also mention is with DAWs, you don't necessarily need a keyboard or an instrument directly tied. It's much easier if you know how to do it, but you can also often just basically make the notes yourselves with the mouse and keyboard and that type of thing as well. So there's various ways of interacting.
For sure. And just to touch on the binaurals here, so in this case, this is, if you could hear it, it's just a very, very simple piano piece, Chopin Nocturne. And we picked it just because of its simplicity, and it's very calm. And what you often see with binaurals, especially on YouTube and on videos, is it's just kind of this steady tone with one purpose. And what we've been experimenting with Brandon is taking melody out of something and trying to figure out perhaps what's the healthy frequency for each melodic note. What's the binaural for each key, and then some sort of carrier tone. So Brandon can probably speak more on that, but this is an example of how we're thinking differently about frequency and binaurals and healing and how to really bring that healthy aspect out of music. So that's kind of exciting and fun, and Brandon and I can help you guys with that if that's something you're interested in as well.
I will also just say it might be good they can't hear it, because this is actually one of the demos that is available with the kit that is there. So just go and actually feel it and hear it there. It's under the Nocturne demo. So it just gives a reason for them to actually experience it with the thermals and vibration and everything there as well.
I think that we've kind of gone over the basics of it. I think that, again, like I said before, I think that I don't want you to take too much of the way we've done it. If you have questions, we can help you get to where you will ultimately arrive. But we're kind of excited for you to arrive somewhere where we didn't even think of. personally. You're younger and smarter.
But before the Q&A, I just wanted to add, there were a couple hands that had familiarity with music and DAWs. Which instruments are you most familiar with, or what do you usually use for anyone that had the hands?
I used primarily Logic before I started like DJing, and then I started using a whole bunch of other MIDI controllers, launchpads, stuff like that.
Okay, and do you did you use actual instruments plugged into Logic, or mostly samples? Like, how would you usually?
Scarlet solos that I'll plug my guitar or piano into.
Cool.
I mean, that's actually really cool that you have a background in DJing, because a lot of our thought process has gone to being able to control the haptics live as a DJ is on stage and to the crowd, and actually get them more involved from a haptic standpoint as he's building the set. So yeah, that could be really interesting to get your input on that aspect of the dots.
Talking some like time in the future about this, because I did actually use haptics when I did a set in South Africa. It was a lot of fun. I'd love to talk more about that in the future.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Well, we know who's going to be on the office hours for you guys during the BuildFest weekend. I think there was another hand or two with DAWs. What do you usually use and go with?
They might have disappeared, but I am wondering, like, does it work well with most of the big names for the DAWs, like Ableton? It's like plug and play.
It would be the same concept with any of the DAWs, yes, basically. Unfortunately, you weren't able to hear this, but when you get the video, it'll become clear. It's just programming within the parameters that then Daniel can turn into the haptics. All you need to know is those parameters, and then you just add a track per haptic, and it goes straight to the haptics. And we have actually an interface that will directly allow you to play right into the haptics, which I think will be there by then.
Yeah, and we'll go through it in a little bit, but that with either for any DAW, you can use MIDI and just do MIDI output as a file and then throw it in, or you can use OSC as a way to signal to whatever you want it to do as well. So for live, OSC is a really great way to go.
Okay.
Okay, questions from anybody on any of, like, whether it has to do binaurals, music, even if you just want to ask any questions, because like that's completely unrelated, but tied into music or whatever. Like, I mean, you've got some good people here, so yeah, just shoot about anything.
Okay, yeah, so I was going to ask, when you're looking at binaural beats, it seemed like a lot of the frequencies you were giving out were like very deep bass frequencies. Is that like normally what would be happening, or are there going to be like treble or alto frequencies?
Yeah, you can be completely flexible on what you create the binaural beats with. I used a lot of bass level frequencies because those frequencies between 30 and 60 hertz are tied to the gamma range. And a lot of people that I designed the Euphoria app to help people sort of boost their focus or boost their relaxation or boost their meditation, kind of like shift your brain into that state. And so the lower frequencies do resonate with the brain better. The higher frequencies, we like those too because we feel those in our body. That's what gets us dancing. So there's benefits to a lot of octaves of the frequencies of the notes. So really, it's just like if you want to create a binaural in the higher octaves, it's the same process. You're just starting off with a higher carrier tone.
So you would basically combine the two to make essentially hyped music.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like if you wanted to, like if an octave of 528, if you wanted to like double that, you're in like the 1000 hertz range, 1056. And if you wanted to build like a binaural beat to generate, a healing frequency is still like 40 hertz. So if you're at 1056 on one side and 1096 on the other, sorry, did I do that math right? Yeah, sorry. 1056, 1096. So yeah, you still have a 40 hertz binaural beat. It's just happening at a higher octave that's out of the bass range.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Sure. But to add on to that, yeah, there's I'll be providing like a whole sort of list or library of options to choose from. So that way it's like if you wanted to, you know, if you're trying to just get the energy up, there's frequencies for that. If you're trying to you know, have the crowd feel more loving or feel more self-empowered or feel more you know, imaginative, like there's frequencies and suggestions for all of those scenarios. So it's really about, you know, what is your intention for the music, and, you know, how can I help you find what frequencies to use more often to help create that effect.
Yeah, and just to add to that, one way I work with Brandon is I'll come to him and say, okay, well, here's a list of the keys that I'm working with. You know, can you provide me with binaural, the frequencies to fit that? So that's been extremely helpful. Even melodic melodies, giving him a set of notes and saying, okay, we want to feel this way. How do you adjust that, and how do you create that to send back, and then I put it in my sessions. So he's very helpful with that.
And thank goodness when I give Maddie like a bunch of numbers and he puts them in, they still sound good.
I will recommend that you do check out the Euphoria app because I mean, one is it's a really helpful thing for things like studying focus, mood, like, you know, things like that. Like it's a helpful tool to begin with. Yeah, and it's the letter U, the number 4, the letter E, the letter A, and then app.com for anybody to check out. There's the web app version and then the iOS version, correct, Brandon?
There's only an iOS version right now.
Okay.
The web app version is you know, under construction. It'll be here soon.
Perfect. So anyways, like it's a way of actually getting to experience to see what, you know, if it does work for you, what works for you. And one of the things that's neat is you can the tones are tied to how you want to feel from where you're coming from, right? So it gives a good indication of that. We kind of did a little bit of that version with the demo tracks that we have there, where JAWS, I mean, we didn't use it with binaurals itself, but just with frequencies, with music. Like we have the JAWS one that makes you feel anxious, right? Then Nocturne, which is the one that Maddie was showing, calms you down, makes you feel relaxed, right? So it's just a way of showcasing how that works. And as Maddie was mentioning, depending where you place the dots gives different experiences, right? So for the Nocturne one, the way that we found the best was actually putting one on kind of either side of the wrist. So you can tie in binaurals with both sides, and it's where there's a lot of nerves, a lot of blood flow. It's sensitive, so it kind of helps with that. With JAWS, if you have them going up your arm on the outside, kind of all in a row, it almost feels like it's getting closer and closer to like the center of mass, the body, where like we're humans. That's the sensitive part. If we lose a finger, it doesn't matter. But if a shark's coming for for us, it's like you know. So you get to kind of play with some of these experiences based on where you put them. If you have sort of like them going closer to the chest, you might even feel it more or experience it more, even with the same tracks, right? So as Maddie kind of mentioned, we do want to see the creativity from each of you, and take it in a bunch of directions, because, you know, as a company, we kind of have to stay a little bit focused with certain things, but you can run off and do whatever.
As you were saying that, I had an idea. This is kind of a mixture between the DataFeel technology and music stuff. So you guys both sides might have to weigh in on this a little bit. But if we were to essentially make tuning forks and attach the data dots to these tuning forks, to like a long string of them, could we essentially replicate the frequency over a larger area than the dots themselves cover?
I can't argue with that. That sounds theoretically like speaker expansion, but Lee, you're the engineer.
Well, Maddie or Clark, did you have any thoughts for?
I mean, I think that
Clark
works.
is yeah, he is the sound expert. So,
Well, I mean, I think that would work auditorily. I don't know that that would work physically per se. You'd have to have, because the tuning fork itself will stop resonating when it presses up against skin. So you need a transducer that will keep resonating at that frequency. But hey, this is what this is all about. I would love to see you do that, you know?
Actually making tuning forks, that was just a simplified way of explaining it. But I'm an engineer. My idea was to essentially use different materials with different inner frequencies. That way, those different materials, when they resonate, they act as a tuning fork, a long-range tuning fork, wireless, and then to resonate on the body. And I'm just thinking, because we only got 4 dots, we don't have enough to cover an arm if we want to do other things.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's exactly why we're there.
yeah, and I mean the other thing is like I'll say we plan on having some extra kits and various things there, but yeah, I mean we don't want to give certain groups one more than others. However, if there's extras left over, and there is a use for it to have more than that, then we can definitely talk. I don't want to make any promises, because sooner or later we'll have every group with 24 dots all over the place, and it'll look cool, but you know, I don't think we'll be bringing that many down. But you know, like these are the things that, I mean, super cool ideas. I'll say we also don't want everything limited to just what we bring. So if you have other materials, or you're already ideating on stuff, or any other group, like feel free to bring in whatever projects, whatever other things. You know, like we want to see a bunch of creativity, and then of course also the winning groups will have an extra, I think, 2 weeks to refine stuff, to add things before South by Southwest as well when they're presenting, right? So, you know, it might be a thing of proof of concept during the weekend, expansion if you're one of the top teams beyond, and so on too.
Thought to add extra dots if we go to South by Southwest.
There, you know, if there's a good case, we're definitely happy to support any of those things, because you know we want everyone to have the best showcases possible. So you know, if that's a full 50 dot kit, you know, we'll see what we can do, as long as there's a good use for it.
I like it.
I think without further ado, maybe I'll pass it over to you, Daniel. You
Sure.
can go over the that part a little bit, and then we'll have some questions, and then
Sounds great. So as I'm going, if any questions pop up from stuff I'm doing, feel free to just interrupt and shout them out, and we'll kind of tackle them as we go, or we can do it after. What I've got loaded here is the built version of the standalone. So if we want to talk at all about other aspects of how it works, we can do that. But this is when you load up, this is where you start. You come here, you get to choose what hardware you're using. Luckily, you're all going to have the same hardware, and that will be the default that it sets to when you load up the kit. The main components are the tester, and then the area where you can place different scenes. So for the tester, what you get is something that lets you choose. You can then set the color that you want something or other to show at, set a brightness for it, and your dots then, what dots 1, 2, 3, and 4 would be showing whatever colors you happen to be setting. For vibration, you can either test the intensity of any given dot, You can also use vibration preset mode, which allows you to choose from a collection of different little preset haptics, like a double click or a bump or something like that. And you can then tell it that you want it to play that instead. And then for thermal, you can set it for hot and cold for each. You're gonna, when it's connected, it would have a readout that's telling you what the temperature on skin and for the heatsink are. And those will kind of keep on updating. And the default mode, so that things stay neutral, is that if you let go of the slider, once you're let going of it, it'll sort of slide back to the middle. If you don't want that, you can just turn off thermal auto reset, and then it'll just stay as whatever you happen to set it to. So this is just a good way to get familiar with what it is that the dots are doing and kind of test the range, etc., of what they're up to. If we go into projects, you'll get a chance to see some of, and actually I'm just going to do a quick screen share reset to make sure that I'm, yes, good, optimized for sound and video. So you'll get to see some of the examples. So Maddie, feel free to highlight any of the things that you had been mentioning before, if you're wanting to show them. So what we have here, there's different models that can be loaded in. You'll notice Maddie was talking about how one of the setups is to have the dots on the front and the back. So you have those. You also just have here a two-dimensional representation of each of your dots, showing what each of the different haptics for them are. So first, we'll play it. Listen to Maggie on the video. What you'll notice is that you can see the dots flashing, indicating what they would be doing here. Red and blue for your temperature, and then a light there to indicate vibration. When you're tinkering in it, you can say that you want just a single one to be showing up. So for example, if we were looking at the track, you could tell it I only want this dot to show up, just like you would do with something with a DAW. You could say just mute this one and this one, etc. So you can just fiddle with it, or you could say I only want to see the vibration, or I only want to see what's going on with light output from it. I'll show you a different example. So you can see there's different objects that are there. The basic ones are the meditating person, and then just a mock-up of the dots themselves. We can then load in different items. So, Maddie mentioned the fact that when he's composing, he just let me know, I want these notes to hit these different things. This note is this dot, or this channel is this haptic. So we have haptic maps, and you can make your own. So all it really is a JSON file where you're defining, and we'll give you the kind of template for that. Which tracks should go to a given node, that one we really aren't using too much. Which tracks go to a given haptic, and then which notes go to a different node, so that you can say, when I hit middle C, I want dot 2 to fire. And you can overload those. You can have it so that multiple notes will go to the same dot firing. So that can be useful if you're playing with different configurations of dots as you're doing stuff. You also have the ability through that menu to load in a specific project. You can set a project directory. So once you have your directory that you're doing for the hackathon, you can set a project directory if you're playing with the standalone to test some things out. You are able to load an MP3 in, so you can change and put any MP3 you like into there. And you can load in a haptic track. So these are the MIDI files. There's a little bit of conversion we do just to optimize some things, but essentially these are MIDI files that you can just load in, or load a MIDI file in and convert it to this, which tells it exactly what you want to play. If instead of doing just a MIDI file, you're wanting to do OSC, I don't know if y'all have worked, for the folks who have done MIDI stuff, Touch OSC, which is the little window that just appeared there, is just a really simple way to configure any controls that you'd like and have them send OSC signals out. So if you're using Logic Pro or Ableton or Max MSP, you can configure those to send OSC out, but this is just a specific tool that makes it really easy to send OSC out. So with this loaded, I can tell it, let's do vibration, and as I press the notes, this could be, but this is on my computer, but it doesn't have to be. That might be on my mobile phone. It doesn't care. As long as it knows the IP address of where it's sending that OSC signal to, it'll be fine, and the port. But you'll notice that I can play dim, play bright, and it's going to show that up on the dots. We can talk more when I'm there. If people are using Touch OSC or something like it, we can talk about configuration. But it's pretty easy to configure something like this to send the signals that you want it to send. Yeah, that's that. Let me see. I'll show another couple of the examples. So Nocturne is one of the ones that that Maddie mentioned. So let's give that a little bit of a go. I'm going to start that again, and actually for a couple of them, I'm just going to get you to notice, because when you're thinking about, and Maddie, if you want to talk a little bit about this, feel free. When you're thinking about how do you compose with the different haptics that are there, or how do you trigger what you want to have happen, take a notice to how the temperature is getting used in a way that's different from the way the vibration is getting used. You'll notice those sort of swells of going slowly down into the cold and then slowly up into the hot. And that's what thermal's good at. It's not great at sharp changes, but it's really good for being able to do something that's kind of slow and impactful. And then the lights and the vibration, you can work with them at a pretty fast pace. Maddie, go ahead.
Yeah, Dan, I don't know if the audio didn't play on my end. I'm not sure if it's just me.
It worked for me.
Yeah, it's working here as well.
Yeah.
No, my
Weird.
system. but
I mean, the sync
Daniel,
is not great, but the audio is playing.
Okay. No, I mean, Daniel, that you had mentioned, yeah, you have to get to know what each haptic is capable of. What you gravitate towards. I think Clark had mentioned at the beginning that thermals we often use for slow building, and then we're finding to give it enough time to reset, and then like if you're going from hot to cold or vice versa. But yeah, it's you get to know the capabilities and what they're best at, and then exploit those.
I'm curious, Maddie, when you're composing, do you tend to start with a given haptic and then layer on that, or what does that look like for you when you're thinking about how to build haptic layers on top of one another?
I usually start with the vibration, and then I break it down into a few categories. Like, like that Queen song, is it primarily melody, and in which case I'll try to mirror melody. If it is more textural or something bombastic, when all the voices go at once, then I fire all haptics at once. Or it could be something very textural. If it's like a guitar rhythm or something, then you can play around with different ways of kind of dancing between the four dots. So and that's where you can be creative, right? So depending on what the music is dictating, you find interesting ways to translate that sense of texture or melody to the skin. And that's a real interesting, fascinating thing to say, well, this sounds like this. How does it feel as a different sense? So yeah, it's fun.
So one thing that I'll kind of just mention around that piece is, as you're saying, we'll talk a lot about this, I'm sure, when we're actually all there. But prototyping is great, and things like having a keyboard that's attached to a thing where you can simply bash out some things and see what it feels like is really good for getting a sense of the haptics. So maybe you're looking at how can I do this with weather or a movie track or a log file from a computer or whatever other things you might want to. How would I use it for the semantic emotional loading of the text of a book that we're using? And so for any of these given things, what you might do is before you start coding anything, just play with it and riff with it. And you can say like, oh, I think, here's the words at the beginning of 1984 that to me feel like they're, happy or sad kinds of words. And I'm just going to play on the keyboard as I do it to see whether the way that I'm trying to translate into haptics is working or not. And that way you save yourself 10 hours worth of code to then say like, actually, that doesn't really work for me. I don't like what that ended up being. And so we'll talk a lot while we're there, but about how you can do those really quick sort of even Wizard of Oz kinds of prototypes to see how things are going to be and to decide which things you want to invest your time into actually kind of fully coding out.
And one thing to, I guess, mention, I don't, are they going to have access to the Queen demo?
Yeah.
Okay, so like with that one, there's very sharp left and right interaction going on. So really think about, do you want kind of that stereo effect to play? And the hard left, hard right. Also, Brandon could probably speak more to this with binaurals. Is it placing them on each side or is it next to each other? And what's best there, or what do you think is best there?
It's it's interesting. I think for a binaural effect to take place, you just need the sound waves to be close enough to interact. I think that, it works completely fine at low decibel levels using headphones. Like the waves pass through our ears into our brain, and then the waves cross sort of like at the center of our brain. So I think that we'd be fine using these frequencies like on the thickness of your arm, maybe even like the thickness of your body, because your body's full of like, space for the sound to pass through and the liquid for it to pass through. So I think that, we're fine with the dots sort of anywhere. Just sort of recognize that if you're setting up a binaural, it's between like these two specific dots. I wouldn't expect an effect if you have like one on your left shoulder and one on your like bottom right calf. But if they're like within, the front of your chest and like, at the same level on your back, that should have a positive effect. The front and the back of your forearm, but like, sort of there's a straight line sort of between them, that makes sense. So yeah, I think that we really do want to get like super technical on a cellular level and figure out exactly how far apart these dots need to be for the optimal effect. But until we get to that point, I think that creating binaural fields is definitely doable through the human body, around the human body, and relatively close proximity.
And I want to highlight something that I find super cool there is because, you heard when Brandon was talking at the beginning about all of this with sound waves and like, not to overinflate your ego there, Brandon, but like the degree of proficiency and fluidity and expertise you have around that. And what I find really exciting is that when it comes to questions like that, you get to hear Brandon say, because you all get to be experimenting on something that is really cutting edge and really innovative. And the idea of using multimodal haptics with binaurals in the body, like the reason why there's a lot of there is because this is breaking new ground. And so like it's pretty cool that you're going to have access to Brandon to be engaging around this kind of stuff while you're tinkering with the tools. So like, again, Brandon, Matt, Clark, these are like stellar people in each of their fields, and so like really lean into that and take advantage of the expertise that they bring to bear.
Well, thanks, Daniel. I mean, outside of being a genius, you're now in charge of marketing. And to your point, the US, the West, National Institutes of Health, they're just scratching the surface on music as medicine. They had a few events in the last 12 to 14 months, hyping up like how much research that they want to support. I can't speak for current political scenarios, but you know, music as medicine is cutting edge. It is what researchers are starting to pay more attention to because the preliminary evidence is very supportive that we're creating positive effects. And there's just like so much room for people to create and explore, enter the healthcare space, the wellness space. So all the innovations that we're talking about that might be like percolating in your mind right now, there's massive demand for it. This is sort of like cutting edge to the point there's not even a market for it yet, but you know, the demand is constantly there, so that's why we're working on it.
And one other little piece that I'll maybe just plant a seed, but thinking about the theme of what's going to be going on there, thinking about libraries, thinking about books, thinking about their different importance, and thinking about those binaurals and music and the ways that those both trigger our emotion and trigger our awareness and our alertness. There's a lot of really cool stuff that you're going to be able to do in thinking about, like, take a given book, think about, you know, Captain Underpants versus 1984 and the different things that they evoke, or the similar things that they sometimes evoke, and how you might want to use those haptics from that musical modality, from that binaural modality, in order to be really tapping into the visceral impact. And you know, that's just one avenue, but I can't wait to see the avenues that you all come up with.
And Brandon, I want to touch on, you know, there is a binaural, correct? But then there are also healthy frequencies. So the binaural obviously are two frequencies, but if you're thinking about melody or other things, or how a frequency may interact or relate to a binaural, that's something to think about. But I just wanted to make sure to throw in, distinguish the difference.
Sure. So to kind of tap on that, there's lots of frequencies out there that have positive effects. I talk about in the video how 7.83 hertz is Schumann resonance that was calculated to help DNA replicate. That is, you know, below the hearing threshold because it's below like 20 to 18 to 16 hertz. And so that's just one frequency. And then there's the whole, you know, the solfeggio tones and, you know, 528 hertz and 639 and 936. And so there's 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 essentially all we're trying to do is just make things vibrate. And the binaurals allow us to make frequencies that are below the threshold that we can hear. But below the threshold our mechanical devices can create. There is some tech out there that can make, you know, a machine vibrate at like 3 hertz or 4 hertz. But before we have without that technology being readily available, we can create the same effects with headphones using two sources of sound waves. So that's what we're doing with the dots. And like Maddie said, it is about tapping into or having the opportunity to say, you know, I want to make somebody's heart flutter a little bit more. I want to empower somebody to be a little bit more confident. I want to help somebody shift from being super angry to, like, you know, positive and passionate. And like if we want to create that in a song, or if we want to create that in an experience, it's just about introducing, you know, the right frequency. Maybe it has to do with the right frequency at the right octave. Or maybe it's like, you know, below the hearing threshold and it's going to impact the brain. So we have to use binaurals. So it's really about, you know, telling, you know, and maybe I do have this area of expertise because I've been obsessing over it, but I'm really trying to find ways to explain it and make it accessible. So what I want to learn from this event is, you know, what can I do to make my process easier for others to replicate? So, you know, if anybody has questions, thoughts, or comments for me, like I want to make this easy for others to use, so that way, you know, I don't have to hold everybody's hand. My goal is to, you know, give this away so everybody can kind of do their own thing. So, yeah, I could go on, but I definitely think that, you know, we have the power to use frequencies to do more than just make people dance or happy or whatever. Like there are health impacts. There's people with injuries and ailments, like people with, like, you know, conditions that never developed like since they were born. Like we can reverse these things. We can, you know, impact certain parts of our DNA or our genetic expression to live the life that we want to live. And music is just, you know, a really convenient way for helping us get there. So.
Just to add quickly to that, also, you know, don't necessarily have to think of something as static either, right? So if you come up and you stack certain things, it's not, don't think of it as just a chord or like a sliver of something. It tells a story, right? So for instance, if you're creating something to fall into sleep, you would, it's linear, right? So you would have a certain set of frequencies or binaural, and then how you manipulate that to bring you down and bring you back up is that's a way to think about all this stuff. So just thinking storyline and time.
Yeah, it was staying within the theme of library. It's like
Yeah.
reading a book. It's a story as it unfolds.
And I don't want to stack more on Brandon, but color is also, there's a frequency color relation that could maybe touch on, but
Yeah, I again I want to elaborate, and I'll share the Da Vinci model that we have that touches on a little bit of the correlations. But in my research with color psychology, the frequencies that we use, I guess the interesting part is that you could take color psychology and you can take the solfeggio scale and see the parallels between the sort of emotional impacts that they all have. And so using color's always had an impact on people psychologically. And one, we can use that to our advantage to use certain colors. Like I said, 528 hertz, the color yellow has the same impact on, the part of our body that has to do with, how we believe in ourselves and how we carry ourselves, our self-confidence and our solar plexus and 528 and like all these things overlap together. Even like 639 hertz and the color green and how that impacts, how that impacts our heart chakra and our respiratory system, our circulatory system, and that's what green vegetables do for us too. So like food is medicine, color is medicine, music is medicine. Like we're all touching sort of the same parallels. And so color, geometric shapes, patterns, there's a lot that I will share and that you'll have access to. And it really is like Maddie said, it's the art that we get to create these healing scenarios with. Like art has always been healing. Now we can like be more intentional, or we can be more understanding about the healing effects that it's giving us.
Yeah. So the one thing that I think is really valuable is we talked a little bit about being on the cutting edge, and another way of phrasing that is that there's just way more questions than answers. And the the main thing that I came across when we were, and the reason we were doing all this, was we found really good research on things that were easy to measure, such as color in a room. How does that affect somebody? But as soon as you start making a study that's more complex, so you start saying, well, color and sound, there's not as much research in combining everything. And because our whole thing is about how do we combine things in the right ways, it just means there's more and more questions, and we wanted to make that easier for people to explore and be creative. And I like the analogies of good movies or good TV. And I think movies are great because you're starting to see moving chairs, you're starting to see all these different things. It's really just combinations of something visual, something audio. Now they're getting touch and feeling in it to really immerse somebody to to be like, that was amazing. I now have this great experience that I want to share with other, that can move me in certain ways or entertain or distract or whatever it is. And for us, we kind of wanted to give a set of those tools to ask questions and hopefully get a bit more of those answers. So like for me, and to kind of bring it back to the project a little bit, like there's so many little bits of knowledge. There might be some that completely disagrees with Brandon, which is fine too, right? Like, at some point it's let's test these things. Let's see what color matches best with Winnie the Pooh, with which like which sound, which vibrations, which whatever, if that's something you want to make more immersive, or if we want conversations to be more immersive, where you can actually kind of like have shared experiences with the person you're talking to, or over music, or like I said, I feel like my job is to just keep listening to questions that people have, and try and help them get a little bit closer to those answers, because that's what I love doing, but it lets me get to talk and work with people like on the call here, where you can tell they each have lots of good experience and real experience in domains that they care about. And Clark was a bit quiet, but anything that like you could tell when we talked about the tuning forks, he had those answers of like, this is in theory, yes, here's some of these practices, and that's what we want, those questions to help guide a little bit closer, to help spark some ideas to do that, and so on. So I want to make sure we got a little bit of time to any questions for those of you that are still around. As you could tell, we've got a passionate team that, that loves doing deep dives into this, so I always love my calls with them. But for any of you still there, this is a chance to ask these guys anything, any quick questions, anything like that. And please do ask questions, because we just we want to make sure that we're not just talking for the sake of talking, and that we get to hear from you too.
I'll add real quick that I shared my a QR code to my LinkedIn profile. And so everyone is welcome to connect with me there, send me questions, whether it's during the hackathon, before or after. I'm just happy to connect.
Well, this has been awesome, because like as a team, like the cohesion between all of you and being able to like riff off of each other has been amazing to listen to, and you're all very passionate about what you do. My background isn't in music, but I'm surrounded by a lot of people who do have that background. I'm interested in whether or not you've done research within film, because that's my background, and also like composing for film as well. So, and we're talking about color theory, and I'm immediately going to like Rosemary's Baby, which is one of my favorite films for color theory. So like, have you guys done experiments with that?
Not yet.
No. I mean, not with this technology. I mean, Maddie and I have both worked in both scoring and mixing score for films for many years, but not with this technology.
I was gonna ask, did you guys, when you were working on film scores and TV and such, did you have communication about what colors were used or things like that, or was it kind of separate completely of what work was?
I've indirectly heard directors talking about color with cinematographers and such, and but color, I don't know, color has just never really come up with my conversations. It's what usually happens is very boring. The director comes in and we block something and say, okay, well, this is, I guess it's not boring, but it's there's no color involved yet. Yeah. I'll ask next time.
Yeah. So like what I'll also say to for your question is, the music team's been extremely patient with me and the hardware guys, because we, like, Maddie and Clark have been involved for a couple of years now, and a lot of it was ideation as we were building hardware, right? So like you could tell how excited they are, but it was also just, this stuff didn't really exist to allow that type of platform and easy playing with these different things, right? So that was really what we wanted to do. Is, I mean, if the same piece of hardware does light, vibration, thermal, and then can be synchronized with music, like it kind of removes the barriers for those types of questions, right? And we also, one of the next little things we're doing is to be able to synchronize video with that instead of just audio, right? So with these types of things, now you can start experimenting with that quickly, easily, more in real time and such.
Which I'll just add, from our standpoint, it's been fantastic to watch the progress of the hardware and be involved with that, and then change our writing style and how we interact with the haptics. I mean, here's where we were just a few short years ago. And now we're light years beyond that. So
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll say part of that form factor was just so it wasn't going to break, not because it was comfortable to wear, right? So we've come lots of different ways and have different attachments and all these different things. So yeah, it's exciting. It is exciting there, but those types of questions are also why we were doing all this and why we're together as a group.
I'll add one tiny part. I spent some time writing some screenplays and some novels and graphic novels and things. And one of my film classes, Blue Velvet, came up as another good example for using like color psychology in films. And so one of the things that I wound up writing was, I guess, influenced by that, like sort of trying to dig into like what colors mean, like how colors can empower us. And it was a young adult sci-fi fantasy, so you can imagine like somebody exposed to like too much orange being able to do X, Y, or Z. So yeah, I do think it's a factor. I think that subconsciously they've been putting it in movies for effect. And I think that, you know, the way we're trying to take music to another level, we can take film and entertainment and television to another level. We're having conversations with people in that space because, you know, television and film, it's so impactful for our consciousness and our psychology that I would love to see more responsible creations with more positive impact.
Also, less on maybe like the digital media side. Have you guys experimented with live performance with like orchestras, the more symphonic, right? Yeah, because we have more classical, like I play the oboe and she's more classically trained.
I was in opera, so
Yeah.
I was like, performances, yes.
You're talking to the right team. I mean, Maddie and Clark, I don't even know if they're allowed to talk about what they're doing, but it is definitely exactly what you're asking about.
Yeah, there's I won't get too far into it, but I grew up playing in orchestras and I think a lot about physical movement of air and sound and resonance on instruments, and how like creating a frequency digitally is very different than like, you know, tuning an instrument to a specific frequency and having that whole resonance, right, with the overtone series and everything else. So it's yeah, we thought quite a bit about it and we're developing a lot of interesting things around that. So
I mean, that's kind of where Maddie and I both come from, because I come from more a sound scaping and and capturing standpoint of microphone choice and room size and proximity of different musicians. And so that has its own part in the orchestration, if you will, because if the orchestration's too big for the size room, you don't get the excitement of the piece of music. And by the same token, if we take that orchestration and we split it out into the dots and have those physically on a listener, then all of a sudden they're feeling the pressure of the performance, they're hearing the performance, and they're also getting these various physical. That's where I'm really excited to take it.
Yeah, and the part that kind of like you think about going back in history, there's full buildings and rooms all designed for us to experience something more directly or in a different way, or you know, for different tones, different
And
scales.
they change throughout different eras of music and how large the ensemble is.
Yeah, and you know, I think some of those changes were great and healthy. Some other stuff throughout the years became out of convenience as opposed to because they were better, right?
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that has been great about a bit of a deep dive with this team is to kind of take a step back and say which things are we doing because that's how we've always done it. What, you know, where does digital help? Where does it hinder? Where can we use things in better ways? You know, or where can we not replicate what happens in other ways, and just, you know, kind of take the best of those things together. And you know, for a little bit of a plug to the university as well, like they're one of the reasons for our dev kits and everything is because we really wanted to give tools to enable a lot of good research to further study some of these things. And like, just from a base level, we've got really good research and tests on like the 2-point threshold of how far away do things have to be before we can feel them. But then what happens with temperature changes? What happens if it's vibration and the frequency changes, or the intensity? Like, how do these things interact? And then it goes back to well, we don't know if it's warm, does that 2-point threshold change? If it's cold, does it change because nerves are being numbed, right? Like, you know, there's lots of questions. And for therapeutic uses, well, that's probably a great thing to be able to feel less if it comes to pain and so on. And we need to know where that is. If it's for enhancing a film or something, well, we need to know that for form factors, for structures. So like there's just a lot of simple basic research that I think needs to be done for platforms. So you know, that's kind of my little plug on, like I said, there's so many questions that need answering, and we just want to keep encouraging people to answer those questions, come up with solutions, and kind of be there to guide along the way. I want to be a little aware of time. We've got 7 minutes left. Any questions still? Because I want more. So if there's one or two there, feel free. And then if not, we can start wrapping it up. But would love maybe one more if there is from anybody.
For like the sound cues, usually can you time those in a way that kind of happens without manual, like viewing side, or by something like does it have a wait time, or does it can be triggered by something else on the user side?
So just so I understand the question, you're talking if we're not doing a synchronized track with music that's kind of pre-recorded? Is that correct on the question? Yeah, so I'll go into a little bit. Daniel can also answer, but we can plug it into like game engines, so it can be done by any cue that way. You can also use our SDK and API, or even some of the sensors, so that movement can trigger it. There can be live streaming data. There's lots of different ways, and we've tried to make it open so that it can be triggers from an input from the user. It can be tied to a number of different things and variables. So yes, there's lots of different ways of tying that in, and I think that's probably going to be one of the best and easiest ways to create solutions for the buildathon, is, or that BuildFest is, how you choose to interact with various different things. Daniel, did you want to add anything?
I think it's pretty solid. So it's just, you can sync things, and like MIDI is great for that, for syncing things beforehand to have go. You can use something like OSC to on the fly do it, or like anything really. Or you can have it so that you are essentially, so you're either jamming it with the signal like you might do with a keyboard on OSC, or so that you're syncing it up with whether that's a game event that happens or any other trigger. So, and you can mix and match between those three. Yeah.
Yeah, that's there should be a way of tying in almost any triggers that you want. I'll put it that way. And if not, come and ask us, and we'll make sure that we do our best to try and to sneak in a little, you know, a little API or a little piece of code or something to help with that if it's not quite there. You
I
guys
mean, I
want-
just want to reiterate that I'm really excited to see what this group of students comes up with. I think it's going to be way outside of what we might have even ever thought of. So that's what's exciting to me.
I've been hearing some ideas, so I'm like, ooh, I want to see that happen. How is that gonna happen in less than 40 hours? I don't know, but
Big ideas.
big ideas, yes. We're finalizing the Discord server to invite to all the people that have registered, and we can have like all the tech resource. There's a channel there for tech resources. So we can start like putting everything that's needed there, any links for the app or any other, you know, things that you think the participants should have. We can use that server for you all.
Yeah, I think we'll really ramp that up, what we put in kind of in the week between the last workshop and then the Build Fest itself. I think Daniel's probably going to be the one that will be keeping a bit of an overview during the weekend, especially because I think he's the best person to do that, and he's great at juggling a lot of a lot of little things and messages, and I don't know how he manages as many things as he does, but he's also, you know, quite good with Discord and all that. So I'll help with the setup. Charles too. We'll put all those resources in, but yeah, I think it'll be a great thing to have going through. So we'll get those signups right away. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited too. It's also just for anyone that is there, just it's always good having a chat with Maddie, Brandon, and Clark. They're just cool people to chat with. They're not intimidating as you probably get to see. They're just, you know, I enjoy that time. So please do reach out. Otherwise they'll be lonely behind a computer, just, you know, shedding a single tear waiting for someone to come talk to them.
Yeah, like I said, I love that you're calling them Build Fest instead of hackathons. I also think that yeah, they're wonderful opportunities to just brainstorm. I would be brainstorming now. And so if anybody wants to like ping me between now and the event starts, I'd be happy to like, you know, run, just share ideas with you. Simple is always better for these types of events if you've got to make something, but it's okay to do the simple version now. It's like a prototype to the bigger idea. And it's the big ideas at these build fests that people like to see and get really supportive behind. So bring the big ideas, and I'll help you do like the simple early version of this.
Yeah. And I'd say one of probably the best things that I can provide is helping to streamline what is a bit ambitious but not super necessary. Because
He's doing that for all of us right now.
Yeah, that's basically been my job from day one, is to say no to most things and then yes to the ones that are critical, so that we can get those through. But I mean, there's tons of good resources and everything there. But yeah, maybe Maddie and Daniel, if you want a quick word, and then we'll wrap it up.
Oh, I'm definitely on the Discord once we have sort of folks on there. Yeah, happy to brainstorm and such. Maybe as a stretch goal, we'll even see if we can tie Discord to the haptics when we're there, just for fun.
Fancy.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, well, the other thing that I would recommend is just talking with Azalea, and as you know, you've got an immersive lab there. Find out like, what does that mean? What do you have access to? What are the different things that you can that you might decide to try to mash up with the stuff that we're going to be bringing to the table? So yeah, get creative.
I can just quickly say to that is, with something like a Unity game engine, a Godot asset as well, you can literally just download free versions of games for VR for various things, and then work on like from that as the starting point too. Right, like, you know, if that fits in a certain way. However, like, you know, I don't want to say no right away to certain things because they seem ambitious. Like, feel free to start there. I know there's looking through some of the profiles, people already might have certain games, they might have certain experience. Like, bring whatever you want into the table that you're familiar with, because that's usually the best ways of getting head starts. And then we look to add from there, right? Like, it's I kind of want everything on the table to start, and then look to refine from there.
And just a quick final for me, at least, riff on that, like whether it's VR, XR, AI, Muse, biofeedback, any of those kinds of things. Dreaming big on them is good, because sometimes the pathways are actually a lot shorter than you might think they are to getting something interesting and functional out. So even if coding isn't your background, if any of those different things, there's very frequently ways to make something cool and interesting happen using whichever the tools are that you're wanting to use.
And Daniel is your guy for a lot of that stuff. That's why he's coming along for the ride.
Yeah, thank you all so much. Looking forward to seeing what you make.
Take care, y'all.